Howdy y'all, welcome back. Thank you for being here. Today, we are taking a look at the oldest known photographs of Washington, D.C., dated from 1857 through 1899. From the mid to late 19th century, the capital city of the U.S. changed drastically, and one of the key ways to understand this is to focus on the architecture. A majority of the photographs we will look at today come from the archives of the Library of Congress, and fittingly, we will conclude today's video with a deep dive into panoramic construction photographs of the Library of Congress from the ground up. Now take the current narrative with a grain of salt, but keep this in mind. Nowhere in the current narrative about Washington, D.C. is there any mention of the Susquehannock indigenous people. Considering the Susquehannock are an extinct race of indigenous people, it makes this history even more mysterious. If we jump into the accepted history of the Susquehannock, not only are we told they were the predominant indigenous group throughout much of New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, but a point is made to associate the Susquehannock with construction projects throughout these landscapes. Furthermore, following the Articles of Peace and Friendship signed in 1652, we're told the Susquehannock abandoned their capital city further north in Pennsylvania, and thus they were aided by the assistance of the governor of Maryland, Charles Calvert, to relocate into Maryland around the Great Falls region, roughly 10 miles from where Washington, D.C. is located today. Furthermore, we're told the Susquehannock also erected an earthen fort with large palisades along the Piscataway Creek on the location that would then become Fort Washington. Would you believe me if I told you that Fort Washington was actually an earthen star fort? What a coincidence. Furthermore, we are told Fort Washington was founded in 1809, and from that point until the onset of the Civil War, Fort Washington, the site of the former Susquehannock Fort, a star fort, was the only defensive structure guarding Washington, D.C. We're also told that most of the original structures of Fort Washington were destroyed by American forces during the War of 1812 in hopes of deterring the British from trying to occupy that fort. If you're unfamiliar, the government of Pennsylvania in the 18th century provided protected land in Lancaster to the Susquehannock, which became known as Conestoga Town. And within this Conestoga Town came such inventions as the Conestoga wagon, the Conestoga or stogie, also known as the first cigar, and the repeating rifle, sometimes called a Lancaster or a Kentucky. However, this peace between the Susquehannock and the European settlers was short-lived, when in 1763, a group known as the Paxton Boys infiltrated the Conestoga town and took the lives of every remaining Susquehannock. As of the beginning of the 20th century, the Susquehannock have been officially ruled as an extinct group. Here are a few more fun facts that I've never heard about Washington before diving into this narrative. Browsing through this history of Washington, D.C., we're told it was first occupied by European settlers under leadership of George Thompson and Thomas Girard. This occurred in 1682, but the site of Washington was not further developed until roughly 1697, when more troops from the province of Maryland were stationed nearby. We're told that Georgetown was the next major accomplishment in developing Washington, D.C., and Georgetown was not founded until 1751. We're also told that Georgetown grew from a tobacco factory and inspection house that was founded along the Potomac River. Washington, D.C. grew further with the founding of Georgetown University in 1780. By June of 1783, an angry mob had stormed Independence Hall in Philadelphia, which was the capital at that time. When the mob would not disperse, Congress was forced to move their proceedings to Princeton, New Jersey. We're told from here in Princeton, Congress voted to find a new permanent location for their meetings, and Georgetown on the Potomac was said to fit all their needs, and this location was chosen. Washington, D.C. developed slowly from plans approved by George Washington himself. A survey team, enclosed within a perfect square, an area containing the full 100 square miles that the Residence Act to develop Washington had authorized. City plans for the new governmental capital began hitting Congress as early as the 1790s, and construction began abruptly. By 1800, the seat of the federal government was transferred to Washington, D.C., and the February 27, 1801 District of Columbia Organic Act placed the entire district under the direct jurisdiction of the United States Congress. Washington did not even have a working water system in place until roughly 1815 or even later, depending on the narrative, and the completion of the Washington City Canal. However, prior to this, most of D.C. was said to have been reduced to rubble by British forces during the burning of Washington in the War of 1812. A major accomplishment of engineering which brought many new residents to Washington was the completion of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal in 1831. This canal coincided with the opening of the first passenger railroad in the United States, the Baltimore and Ohio, which reached Washington, D.C. in 1835. Most of Washington's railroad systems were completely overhauled following the Civil War, fully connecting Washington, D.C. to the rest of America. We're told a full-fledged water system to provide clean drinking water for every citizen did not come into being until 1859 with the Washington Aqueduct, which didn't actually reach every citizen until 1864. We're told even throughout this Civil War time period, Washington, D.C. remained a relatively unoccupied city that was nearly completely abandoned during the summer. However, seeing a need to protect the federal seat of government, Abraham Lincoln created the Army of the Potomac in 1861, which caused the population in Washington to jump from less than 75,000 people in 1860 to over 132,000 people by 1870. Just days following the conclusion of the Civil War, the character of Lincoln lost his life in Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. Moreover, in 1871, Congress signed the Organic Act, which looked to provide better sanitation to the city while also better unifying the District of Columbia. We're told by 1888, the electric streetcar system arrived to Washington, D.C., which greatly attributed to another period of rapid growth. However, prior to the opening of the electric trolley system in Washington, we have the closing and filling in and covering over of the Washington Canal, which occurred in 1880. During the late 19th century, the greatest architect in Washington, D.C. was considered to be the German immigrant Adolf Klus, who is credited with constructing anywhere from 75 to 100 notable public buildings in the city, including the National Museum, the Agriculture Department building, and the schools of Sumner and Franklin. The monumental Washington Monument, the world's tallest stone structure, was completed in 1884 at a height of 555 feet. By 1901, the National Mall was being redeveloped for a greater impact on the tourism industry of Washington, D.C. The McMillan Plan was enacted around this time as part of the City Beautiful system, which aimed to allocate funds for urban development and landscape projects. We're told the McMillan Plan was considered completed with the founding of the Lincoln Memorial in 1922. Also, in 1922, the most devastating winter storm in Washington, D.C. history arrived, known as the Knickerbocker Storm, which dumped over 18 inches of snow on Washington. By 1930, the slums within the Federal Triangle were completely demolished. By the year 1930, we also have population soaring to over 300,000 new residents, and Washington, D.C. at this time experienced a housing crisis. During World War II, an estimated 200,000 people traveled through Washington Union Station daily. Around this time, the Pentagon was founded, being one of the largest office buildings ever constructed, opening partially in 1942 before coming into full operation by 1943. By 1957, Washington, D.C. became the first major United States city since the Civil War to have a predominantly African American population, and Washington, D.C. became a home for many key battles and influences during the Civil Rights Movement. Today, Washington, D.C. is home to just over 700,000 residents with the motto, "Justice for All." And yet, I can't help but wonder where the justice was for the Susquehannock, and I can't help but wonder if Washington, D.C. was chosen for reasons beyond what we are being told in the current narrative. So I believe I'm going to wrap up my narration on this video there, but I definitely would love to hear what stood out to you the most about this video down below, whether it be something from the current narrative or it be any of the photographs. I can't wait to hear your thoughts and your ideas. I've also gone through and I've provided the title for every single photograph when applicable, and I've also given you the date of each photograph, at least when we are told that these photographs were taken. So hopefully that will help you a little bit more in your research. And other than that, I can't wait to get into this discussion about Washington, D.C. with you in the comment section. And stay tuned for the rest of these photographs. We probably have over 75 left to look at. I had about 115 in this entire compilation. And also stay tuned for the end of the video, because those last 15 to 20 photographs, those are going to show the supposed construction phases of the Library of Congress. So again, I thank you all so much for being here. I thank you for taking time out of your day to open up your mind to the old world or the pre-1900 history, to look at these photographs and to appreciate what we are actually seeing in front of us, while also giving yourself the ability to question everything. That is what this channel was made for. I do this research so I can share my work with others to try and peel back the veil that's been covering history for so long. And in the end, this work is only possible because of viewers like you, people who like, share, subscribe to the channel, they leave comments that help to get this information out there. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much for 125,000 subscribers. I honestly, in a million years, never would have thought that my research and my way of just trying to share these little things with you, to get the photographs out there that may have never been seen if I didn't make these videos. It gives me the fuel to want to continue doing this, and to see any amount of success in doing this research, I would have been so proud. But to hit 125,000 subscribers, I can't tell you how much that means to me. So thank you all so much, and we will talk again on the next video.